I think we are live, and so it's 8:30, and I'm calling this Finance and Economic Development Committee meeting to order. It's February 22nd. We have a 2-item agenda. I don't think we have any addition. Well, now I'll call this Finance and Economic Development Committee meeting to order. It is still 8:30 on February 22nd. We have a 2-item agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
Move to approve the agenda as published.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that motion unanimously carries. And our first agenda item, if Troy is here now. Here he is our 2022 budget amendment update. Here we are in February 22nd, already talking about budget amendments.
Meeting, Mayor. Good morning, members of the committee. Yeah, the mayor really said it. It's already February, and we're talking about pretty significant amendments, actually. This is definitely the earliest I can remember coming before this committee with an update. Actually, some of these changes started happening before we even adopted the budget, but at some point you just have to stop the changes and get your document prepared and before council. So definitely apologize and hope this isn't indicative of what you think our ability to budget is. We do think we do a pretty good job at budgeting, but nonetheless, you do have in the staff report a description of the significant amendments that we have identified already. There are a number of smaller amendments, but we really want to bring before you the more significant amendments. And I want to start the discussion with staffing. We definitely do not like to come before this committee or the council with mid-year staffing adjustments. So clearly these are significant issues we're dealing with, but I do want to start there because there are a number of positions that we're talking about and to help address some issues that we're dealing with. I do want to start in the utility billing division. This is one of my divisions that I oversee. We've been dealing with some pretty significant issues in the last, certainly the last couple of years, but it's really ramped up here in the last 6 to 9 months. Issues dealing with, the lifting of the governor's moratorium on collection enforcement. We had significant staffing turnover in 2021. We have a radio read meter system that is slowly failing, but that is definitely picking up speed in terms of the failure. We've identified some billing system processing challenges. What's not listed in your staff report is we're looking at possibly converting our merchant services. This is our credit card services. We have an RFP that we're evaluating as we speak. I do want to, before I get too far, I do want to say that, the staff that's there is tremendous. We've made some really strong hires. I also want to certainly acknowledge the support we received from the rest of the finance department as well as the public workshop. We've made several all hands on deck calls, and they were answered each and every time. So I certainly appreciate the sense of team and the effort and support that we felt from the rest of the organization. But really what we're trying to accomplish in utility billing is we need to buy some time and capacity to identify solutions, to develop those solutions as well as implement them. We do want to, get back to that. Well, I don't think we've really lost that high level of customer service, but we certainly want to make sure it's sustainable. So to do that, we're suggesting that we hire 4 limited term employees, 3 of which will be in the field. So these would be automated meter tech positions. What we're seeing in the field is a large number of our MTUs. These are meter transmission units. These are the electronic pieces that send the meter reads to our automated system. Those are failing at a high rate. The system is definitely at its end of life. On what's complicating this issue is we're running into a supply chain problem. In fact, we don't expect to receive any parts for at least 4 months. So not only can we not fix the bailing system, it's going to build, and we have a large number of manual reads that we're going to have to contend with through the next several billing cycles. So to deal with that manual issue, and also to be able to have the staff in place when we do get the supply to get out and fix those meters. The fourth position in this division is an administrative position. As we transition to a manual process in the field, that creates a manual process inside the office. So we need that administrative support really to support those three positions in the field. Also within, yes, Councilmember Greenstein.
Just curious, Troy. So the system itself is at end of life, as you mentioned, and it's obviously, so you're looking at changing over, right? Does it make sense then? I mean, you said you're going to be getting parts to do repairs here in about 4 months. Does it even make sense at this point to spend money on repairs if the system's at end of life and it's time to move on to a new system?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've been wrestling with this dilemma for a couple months and trying to figure out how to move forward. What we're going to do is not only are the meters themselves failing in terms of end of life, we've been told by our provider, our vendor, that the current software is at its end of life at the end of year. We don't have the time to switch out 25,000 meters between now and end of the year. So we're going to actually upgrade within this system, which will, one, free up the supply chain for us. We'll be actually going to a slightly different unit in terms of the radio read devices that go on the meters. So you may recall within the water capital improvement plan, there is a scheduled replacement for the system in 2023. It's about $6.8 million. We're looking at delaying that project, and that will actually help fund these positions as well. So really, we're buying probably a 2 to 3 year period in terms of this upgrade in order for us to do an evaluation. And I'll say that my discussions with the city manager, everything's on the table in terms of what type of solution we have going forward, even including, do the radio reads even make sense? If you think about a useful life of a system of, 8 to 10 years, $7 million every 8 to 10 years, that's, where I think the technology is great and we have live data. I think we do need to evaluate everything including going to more of a, maybe less technology going forward. Of course, that means less information, but I mean, $6.8 million is a big number in terms of the life cycle of this equipment.
Is it feasible for three extra employees to read 25,000 meters if you don't use the technology?
That's a great question too, Mr. Mayor. And that's all part of the evaluation. If you amortize out, $7 million a year, or $7 million over that 8 to 10 year period, that's $1 million a year. That's
8 employees.
Yeah, that's a lot of staff. Not that I'm suggesting we'll hire that staff, but I think we do need to take a step back and really take a look at this system and how we're delivering this service. So, that's again part of our proposal is to really buy this capacity to allow us to, make this evaluation.
So we've been building up that 6.8 million fund, right? We've been setting aside money every year to do that.
Yeah, it's been programmed, as you know, when we look at water rates, we look at the cash flow issues within the capital improvement program. So yes, that's all been programmed in. So yeah, that's our short-term plan for this system. I'll also say we're going to be looking at structure within this department as well, organizational structure, as well as kind of our overall service delivery approach for this division as well. Anything else on utility billing before I move to general fund staffing?
Let's say we did, purchase a new system. What's the turnover time for such a thing? That's 25,000 valves and meters. Is that about right? That doesn't happen overnight.
That's correct. Yeah, that's unfortunately no one, no one from the administrative side in the city has gone through this upgrade. We have some field staff that have been here and some couple of shop staff that have been around since that. But that's no easy task in terms of implementing a new system. That's also part of our issue too, is we just we have a high level of work that's happening, a lot of workload that's happening, and there just really isn't that capacity to take on a project of that size. It's probably a year to 18 months, I would say.
And does the vendor play a role in that, or do they just truck us some bunch of supplies and say, here you go?
I think there's a couple different approaches. I mean, that's part of our evaluation too. We could hire temporary staff to do the installs. We could look at the vendor themselves. But there's a lot of things we need to consider in terms of that implementation. We have a billing system we have to keep in operation during this transition as well.
Yeah. And then kind of link the new system to the billing system, which may or may not be new as well, or we have to. Yeah, there's
a lot there.
Yeah.
And when did that system first come in?
2007, 2006, 2007. We were fine tuning it when I arrived in 2009. So I mean, there were still some meters that weren't quite working, and we were trying to get to that 100% radio read level. So yeah, that 2009, I would say we were really fine tuning the system, trying to find the correct units. Topography plays a big role in terms of reads. So yeah, really dialing it in 2009. So I would say the bulk of this was 2007, 2008.
Yeah, a lot of those meters are buried now, right?
They are. Those boxes fill up with dirt. There's issues with moles. Sometimes they're filled with water. That's and landscaping has been been put over these meters as well. I mean, think about not having the whole premises. You don't have to open up the box to do a manual read. So those get covered with landscaping as well. So it will be a significant project.
Mm-hmm. I guess speaking about meter reading, the rack water issue was an interesting find. How did we figure that one out?
I don't remember the details of how it was discovered. I don't know.
Is it just one field that we were missing it on, or?
It's probably several fields, but one meter. I'm not sure how many irrigation meters we have at the rack. We probably have more than one. I think what happened was the meter got changed out, and something happened in that transition. So yeah, that's another significant amendment.
So the question is do we have that in reserves, or how racks run so lean all the time? How are we going to pay for that extra water?
That'll happen with a transfer from our current expense fund. Yeah, you're correct. The rack does run lean, and certainly would be challenged in paying 5 years worth of back irrigation billing. So yeah, that'll happen through a transfer from the current expense fund.
Are you gonna try to do that all at once, or can you do it over a little time? And at this point, we're just paying ourselves. So
yeah, well, the proposal is to pay that back billing all at once. We have, it was I think July or August of last year, we got that meter corrected, and the rack has been paying the month-to-month proper billing.
Hmm.
I mean, we could do it over, a longer term, but there's, adequate reserve to just correct that and not have to manually deal with that process for the next couple of years or a few months.
Okay.
Okay, also related to staffing, I believe the committee was briefed on a limited term human resources specialist. Human resources is dealing with a lot of vacancies and recruitments. And to top everything off, they have a temporary staffing shortage. So definitely need a bridge employee to help deal with that volume. Deputy Mayor.
Just real quick, I was hearing you say that during COVID we lost a few people, or quite a few people. We've had some real staffing situations. Do we know how many people we lost, or kind of what, I from what I understand, we have like 328 employees, somewhere in that ballpark, but I don't remember what it was before COVID. But I know that we're adding positions. So I was kind of wondering, what was our pre-COVID staffing level versus to our current staffing level?
It's, I don't have the total number of recruitments. I want to say as COVID was starting, it was in the 80 to 90. Maybe city manager could help me, but we've had a lot of promotions. Folks will leave and people will promote, which causes really 2 vacancies instead of just the 1. As you're doing that backfill, but it feels like the last 12 to 18 months, we've kind of had a constant 20 to 25 vacant positions as retirements that have occurred, and like I said, as folks have left the organization, and we've backfilled those.
Yeah, pre-COVID we had, call it a little over 280 employees. Our last budget we had 303, and then as Troy had mentioned, I'm guessing here, I think we've had at least 15 people either leave the organization or retire. And we've gone through this weird domino effect where, someone gets promoted and we haven't been able to catch up. Plus just also trying to fill the new positions that we budgeted in the last couple of years.
Thank you.
All with a growing city.
Yeah. Do you have an idea
Needing more people, not less.
when you expect to get to full employment?
I mean, I think the last time I talked to Mary Ann, our HR director, I think we were still doing about 28 recruitments, either open positions or again, recently vacated, or just trying to fill the positions. And it's a really weird labor market right now too.
Yeah, it's tough. Good luck finding people right now.
Everyone is struggling to find people, private sector, public sector, everywhere. It's very, very difficult situation.
Yeah, is some of it because we're not offering enough to attract the labor in? Is that some point, if they just remain unfilled, are you gonna have to go back and look at?
I mean, we've had to make some adjustments. I think that's impacted more of our seasonal staff than it has maybe regular staff. But I mean, there's just people are moving out of state. People are doing life changes. I mean, there's just a lot of things that we can't control. I mean, I think flexibility in the workplace has been kind of the #1 discussion point internally, either it be, different type of schedules or teleworking. I think we're adapting to that, but I think that's a constant thing that we're gonna have to evolve into.
I just sat through an economic report. There's still 11 million job openings in the United States. 4 million people a month are leaving the workplace, or at least quitting their jobs. So, I mean, you think about the number of jobs that were lost or that were open and regained through the COVID pandemic. It's really quite amazing to be here today saying there's still 11 million job openings out there.
Mm-hmm. Troy, did you get that? Did you get that from the state office? That update?
Part of it was it was actually an update given by the state treasurer's office.
Yeah.
So it was, the economic forecast just came out last
Tuesday
day, and this was a meeting on Wednesday, so it was
yeah.
very
The mayor's got that a preview of that the Friday beforehand, so, or the Thursday beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got those same numbers. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it's hard to even predict where we're going to go. I mean, that's how crazy it really is out there. It's challenging.
More jobs than there are people looking for work. And it's crazy, such a crazy world right now. And it's not like there's no federal money anymore. I mean, unemployment is what it is. There's no extra money. So it's not that keeping people out of the workforce anymore. I mean, that was the excuse for a while, but I don't know if anybody understands what's keeping people out of the workforce at this point.
I think there's a mismatch of skills that the labor market needs, and then the generation that's replacing the boomers. I mean, I think Gen X has sometimes been called the sandwich generation. So we can't backfill all the, engineers and specialty positions that the boomers are vacating. And so you have this weird lag that's going on right now. And the millennials are the next biggest generation, but they don't have maybe the same experience that's being vacated.
Well, the reason why we can't backfill the baby boomers is because they held on to their information and didn't teach us. It's 100% the truth.
Well, that, and we also didn't send, no one was going to vocational training. We didn't train people in so many of the positions because people didn't want to go that. We had such a large push toward higher education and college and no push toward people going into vocational training at all for so long.
Yep. Do you need a motion to forward this on to full council?
I don't. This is really, an update. We typically don't take the council action until September. If the committee doesn't mind, I just have two more positions I want to make sure that you're on board with as so we can move forward. The proposal is to add an accounting payroll specialist, kind of similar to what we've been talking about in terms of the growth of the organization. Scott gave the number of 303 full-time equivalents in this current adopted budget. That's a 25% growth from 10 years ago, and most of that growth is in the last 5 years. So both HR and finance have been kind of contending with that growth and the administrative support necessary for that. Another position in finance is a department assistant, some sort of administrative support for the division. To also help the utility billing division gain some capacity, we're going to move the administration of business licensing and B&O tax into accounting. It makes a lot of sense, even from an organizational structural approach, but as well as, like I said, the workload issue. So those are the two additional positions. I believe the remainder of the significant budget amendments, the council is aware. In fact, most of these are council actions that have taken place this year. There has been a lot of opportunities so far in 2022. One last comment before I turn this back over to you. I'm not sure if you're aware of a couple of grants in the transportation area that we have secured. I certainly want to celebrate that. We received a $216,000 surface transportation grant. This will help with the design of the roundabout at Willamette and Campus Glen. So that design will begin this year. So there's $55,000 requested for that. And we also, same grant, we received an award of just under $1.5 million for the College Street and 29th roundabout. So again, almost 1.5 million. Their design will start on that project. So in 2022, we'll need $125,000 for that. Again, I think the rest you're well aware in terms of updates.
And the reason why we received those two STBG grants is because those are reallocated funds that other jurisdictions weren't able to obligate, and we were able to obligate on time. So we were able to have projects ready to go. And these were two projects that were selected through the Transportation Policy Board and recommended to the full PRPC Council for approval, and that's how we got those funds.
Or briefly on that. Real quick, I just had a question about job, outreach for employment for filling city positions. And as the weather starts to warm up, we're probably going to have some outdoor events depending on how things turn out next month. Do we do job fairs as a city? Do we set up booths at our public events and stuff like that? I know we're gonna have to do something, and I know it's a small thing, it's kind of a grassroots thing, but we're gonna have to fill these positions, get qualified people, and some of those qualified people may already live here.
So we do.
Oh.
It was actually we had obviously more participation given pre-COVID. So we also had a pretty big outreach with Joint Base Host McCord as soldiers trying to exit to make sure we tap into that labor pool. Biggest thing right now, we're relying on social media like LinkedIn. That's actually a very common platform for job seekers, and so we're actually invested in that too. But
yeah, I see your posts on and I always share your we're hiring posts. I always share those in my social media to make sure everybody knows, hey, if you're looking for quality work and in a good work environment, come work for the city. But I just if we don't fill these positions, then the existing staff, we run the risk of burning them out too.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, and again, I think there is a merit in having that personal touch. I know the chief has done some recent stuff just for potential police officer recruitments. It makes a big deal to see the chief and see who potentially you'd actually be working for if you were hired. So that is a common approach that we use for recruitment.
So,
Right
Troy, I know we usually wait till September to do the official budget amendments. I know we've had some conversations about, is that the right time, or should we do it twice a year? At the very least, this is the biggest budget amendments I've seen in my 12 plus years now on council, on this committee, this early in the year. I feel like maybe you just, at the very least, maybe when we do the budget encumbrance carryovers, that you at least advise the council a little bit on some of the bigger ones, because it is so unusual. And to sort of I'll wait till September, that feels a little strange in this circumstance.
Sure.
Or I'm not sure what's the best way to do that, but
Yeah, it might make some sense just to bring an ordinance before the full council. I mean, if we're going to brief, we might as well take action as well.
yeah, I think you should. In this,
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big budget amendments. I mean, so maybe, yeah, I think you should maybe bring this forward in an ordinance.
It feels like the council should see it and take action on it. It's because of the size. September's pretty far out.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Thank you.
maybe end of March, early April.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
By April, for sure. That makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, no problem.
And there may be something between now and April too. That
The way this year's been going, absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay.
I had a question for you guys. Okay, so the roundabout at Campus, Glen, and Willamette. We get a lot of mail about the potential of there being, some retail there, and I'm wondering if you guys think the design work and the and showing kind of a rendering of how it can look and how it's not going to be some big ugly neighborhood eyesore or whatever. I get a lot of, I see you guys see all the same emails I do, and maybe you think maybe that will help alleviate some of the I don't know, because it's the opposition seems as if they seem.
I think we have to be real careful on this stuff, because this is still a quasi-judicial matter before this council. So
agreed. Do you know when we'll have a rendering of that potentially?
I don't. We just received the funding for it, so that's the point of getting that $216,000 to do preliminary design.
Good enough. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about the budget amendments? Then let's go to the budget carryovers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has been a normal process for the city and council for 6 or 7 years. We bring this amendment early in the year, and to the mayor's point, because there are significant budget appropriations that we're actually a little nervous about exceeding budget. So definitely makes sense in terms of the budget amendment coming before council earlier. But this technically is a budget amendment, and it is limited to projects and purchases that were budgeted in the previous year, so 2021, that we simply want to carry over to the current year in order for us to complete those. I'll just share some quick highlights because, like I said, these were in the approved budget, so these should be familiar to the committee. In terms of the current expense fund, we have right around $200,000 for social services, one being the Genesis House project that the council just discussed recently. We also have $95,000 in the carryover for the senior services home share program that we didn't expend in 2021. We're carrying over some funds to make the final payments on the improvements that were made at the Veteran Services Hub. We are carrying over about $3 million for the police station land acquisition. And we do have $2 million budgeted currently in the 2022 budget. So it'll be a total of $5 million in the budget for property, and then that 30% design that the council has been discussing. In terms of capital for the general fund, we have some monies continuing to be carried over for website improvements as well as our public records project. We have $150,000 again related to the Genesis House project. So this $150,000 is actually for the improvements to the home. There's right around $300,000 for the police department in terms of facility and equipment enhancements. We're also carrying over $464,000 for the Woodland District. This was an economic development action the council took probably 3 years ago. We certainly want to preserve that so the council has maximum flexibility in terms of being able to react within that district. In terms of the RAC, there's right around $500,000 being carried over for improvements related to the fencing project for fields 1 and 2. We're going to finish the parking lot design here in the first half of 2022. And we're also in the midst of installing the expanded security camera system there at the RAC. So those are kind of the highlights of the carryover proposal. There are utility capital carryover requests as well. Pretty typical stuff in terms of the encumbrance carryover for you. We would ask the committee to, by motion, to forward this to the full council for consideration. I'd be glad to have answer any questions you might have or provide any more details within the amendment. So back to you.
I would move to forward to the full council with recommendation for approval.
I'll second that.
Been moved in second. How about some discussion? There's looking at the under special projects, the incubator hub market feasibility and springboard incubation entrepreneurial. I don't remember talking about those two special projects.
So the springboard was an idea that we wanted to discuss with St. Martin's University and do a potential partnership where people be coming out of, I'll say the university, we potentially find some space for them and actually help develop a business model. And sort of hence the springboard, similar to what like MIT would do, and to support that process. We're still discussing it.
Will that be in conjunction with the makerspace?
It could be, there's a relationship there, but yeah. So let's say you had a great idea for some product. We were trying to support that. They could be working with the makerspace, but they maybe need some commercial space or office space. How do we help develop that? It's still a program. The idea there, if we actually had a model that we'd come back to council and have more discussion about, that's why it hasn't been spent yet.
Okay, and then the incubator pub market feasibility?
I based this one the same.
There's two different funds there. I mean, interesting stuff. I guess they must have been in the budget, and
Yeah, we talked about in the budget proposal. Again, it's one of those things that we just have not been able to help develop just because of other priorities.
Okay, interesting. Is there any other questions about some of these carryovers? Seeing none, there's been a motion and a second to recommend to full council the adoption of this ordinance for the budget encumbrance carryovers. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that motion unanimously carries. And with that, we've reached the end of our agenda. Good seeing everyone this morning. Scott?
Hey, just one thing, since we were just talking about budget amendments. So this is some good news, but it would require a budget amendment if it actually gets signed. But I know the mayor's aware, but looks like we're getting traction from our capital budget request for the state legislative session. $103,000 for Lacey's electric vehicle, basically infrastructure. So the idea there is that we put this in parks and our employees can use them while we're using our vehicles. And also the public, and also the Oxford housing program on, which is about $500,000. That would be to help people, with drug addiction, trying to get out of that situation back into a stable environment. So those are two issues that may come forward too.
Knock on wood, for sure.
Hey, real quick, Scott. This weekend I was driving past the Slater Kinney DOT mound, and it's looking really good. It's all cleaned up. I know that when things look bad, you hear a lot, but when things look good, no, there's very few people to say good job. So I just wanted to say that, the things that have been put in place to, alleviate some of the concerns of the citizens, and we were getting a lot of letters, and the things that were put in place have worked. So I just wanted to say thanks, because when I drove by there and saw no more Sandy cans and no more people on that mound, the first thing I thought was, what we did was the right thing, and what we did worked. And maybe that's, well, I won't say that part, but maybe that's why we're, seeing new people arrive. But thank you for all that hard work, and Rick and your team and your staff for making that really happen. I haven't seen a letter from the jewelry store for a while, and so on. So thank you. Good job.
Yeah, Mayor, I appreciate that. That's been a lot of work. Obviously, our police department's done an outstanding job with the CRU and their Mott team. And you're right, Rick's folks have been involved. Public Works has too. I think the rapid response cleanup team has really been a good effort too. So it really has been a team effort. So appreciate it.
Now just convince the other jurisdictions to use our model, and the whole county could look.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Actually, I agree with that 100%. But
it's working. It clearly works.
Yeah, it does. It works if you put the right resources, individualize them, talk to people, find out what their issues are. Yeah, it takes a lot of manpower, but it's better to.
It does, but at least the money is going. The resources of the city are being used in an effective manner.
Yeah.
Unlike a lot of jurisdictions that are putting a lot of resources in, but not getting the same results because they're not as effective.
Yeah.
So it clearly what we're doing works.
Yeah. Although I know Scott, you and I keep having this conversation about whenever we can get the volunteer program up and going for the trash pickup. Can you give us an idea?
I don't have an update on it, but I have talked to Scott Ager about it. They're working on it. The idea would be just for the committee's benefit is to I think you've heard people say, look, we want to keep our community beautiful and we'd be willing to help and pitch in. And so the idea would be that we'd either provide either buckets or garbage bags, a pickup litter device, and then have some program where people can come to the shop, pick those items up. We'd know where they are. Either they come back and drop off the bags or we pick them up out in the field. Just a sort of community effort to kind of keep our streets and sidewalks clean. So that is in the works.
I just don't want that to die on the vine, even though things are looking better. You know, that's a good program that we need to keep going. You know, the other conversation that we've had is all the shopping carts that we've seen out in our community. And I know we're having people go out and grab shopping carts and stuff, but you know, there's been some conversations about requiring a locking device on shopping carts, say on grocery stores or wherever have over a certain amount of shopping carts. Maybe, you know, those devices that will lock that wheel up are very effective. And so where are we at in conversation? Is that something we're still sort of?
So we looked at it preliminarily, but with our rapid response cleanup team, we basically haven't gone further on that. I mean, it's worthy of, I think, maybe a next step as we keep discussing how do we respond to this. But I think the bigger question from policy level is, it may be seen as punitive, but clearly it is an impact to the community. But so you'd either require the grocery stores or retailers that have large shopping cart, you know, a lot of shopping carts, either they do a locking mechanism on the wheels if they like leave a geofence, or potentially there's examples out there where you pay $1 to get your cart, and then you get your $1 back once you put it in the proper place.
There's a grocery chain called Aldi. We don't have them out here, but they're in a lot big. Most of the country has them at this point. And that's what they do. So when you take your shopping cart, you actually put money in to get your shopping cart. You get the money back when you return the cart. But what it does is it gets people to actually return the cart instead of leaving them all over the parking lot.
Yeah.
They're actually returning them because they get their buck back.
Yeah. Well, maybe should have, you know, someone from Rick's team to start a conversation with some of these larger, you know, either retail or groceries, and say, hey, let's work together. What do you think is the most effective way where we can do that? And so I think it's worth at least starting the conversation with them. Like I want to work with them, and I'm sure they don't want their carts walking off either. And so maybe
that'd be a great council retreat discussion, because this goes back one of these sort of situations where that's another sort of project or a task that we need to work on. I think it does intersect with homelessness. I mean, just to be very upfront about it. And so if we continue to work on how do we enhance our posture, proactive engagement on homelessness, maybe that's an idea we want to pursue, and just make sure we have the resources to tackle that. But it has been discussed. We just haven't pursued it since the rapid response cleanup team.
I don't know the cost on those carts, but they've got to be at least a couple of $300-400, I would have to think.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine that the stores wouldn't like to find a way to keep them as well, right? I mean, I've been to Fred Meyer at times when you couldn't get a cart. They just didn't have any anymore, you know, because they're missing so many of them. It's got to be an expense worth protecting, I would think.
Anecdotally, we used to pick them up and corral them, and then we'd say, come pick them up, but they wouldn't pick them up because of just what was put in them. They don't want to deal with the cleanup and all that kind of stuff with it. So
yeah, but if it never left their property, they wouldn't have that issue.
Sure. Yeah, if they stayed on the property, you wouldn't have that issue. I just think it's worth maybe doing some preliminary conversations because it could just be an ordinance, right? But I don't know. But I wouldn't want to do anything without talking to the retailers, grocers, and seeing if we can come to some sort of agreement ahead of time. If not, you know, what would they think if we put in an ordinance that required a locking mechanism? And
in addition to that, they likely already have a plan or a strategy, or have, you know, somehow discussed this in an organization, and it'd be nice to know what their strategy is, if they have one, or and maybe we could apply for some sort of state grant to help them, or I don't know. I just throwing it out there. Okay. Well, with that, we have reached the end of our agenda. So without objection, I will call this meeting adjourned.